The wind tore across the Montana plains like a living thing that winter. It didn't whisper. It screamed. Snow came sideways, biting the skin of any man foolish enough to face it. In the heart of that desolation trudged a figure layered in oilskin and old scars, every step deliberate yet burdened. His name didn't matter much anymore, most just called him the rancher. His ranch sprawled lonely over 600 acres of nothing. Half his fences lay broken under the snow, the barn roof sagged inward, and the graves out back, two of them side by side, remained the only markers the storms didn't swallow. Each morning he woke expecting not to. That day, something changed. At first he thought it a coyote, a shape darting near the hay barn, something lean and desperate. He readied the rifle anyway, hands steady despite the cold slicing through the cracks in his gloves. He moved slow, cautious, snow crunching beneath heavy boots as he rounded the barn's edge. There she crouched. A girl, small, ragged dress hanging off bones that barely held her upright, fingers raw from frostbite, cheeks gaunt. She wasn't stealing, she couldn't, she lacked the strength. Still, old instincts barked at him. Stand still, thief. His voice cracked like a whip in the dead air. She flinched but didn't bolt. Perhaps she couldn't. Perhaps she knew running was pointless. She looked up at him, eyes, hollow, distant, but human. Then she fell. For one long moment, the rancher simply stood there, rifle raised, as snow layered over her motionless form. He could have let the wind finish her. Part of him, the part that buried two bodies behind his house, told him to walk away. The world was already cruel enough without adding mercy to its sins. But he didn't. With a bitter curse, he slung the rifle, stooped, and lifted her. She weighed nothing, like lifting memory. Inside, the hearth's embers barely lived. He laid her down near it, knelt beside her, watching frost melt from torn skin. Her lips moved, no sound came, but he leaned closer. My parents, they died. Today. Not a question. Not a plea. A confession. He hated that it mattered. For hours he watched her shiver, unsure if from cold or fever. He thought of leaving the door open, letting nature choose, but when her body curled tighter, fists clenched near her throat, he found himself ladling broth into an old tin cup instead. She coughed it up twice before swallowing. When morning came, she still breathed. Against better judgment, he kept feeding her. When she woke enough to sit up, her first words weren't thanks. They wouldn't wake up, I shook 'em. He didn't know what to say. For 3 days, silence reigned. She'd eat, sleep, and murmur to herself when she thought he wasn't listening. Names, a woman's, a man's, over and over. He told himself it was temporary. The storms would pass, her strength would return, and she'd leave like everything else he once cared about. On the 4th day, she tried to help. He found her outside, dragging a log twice her size toward the woodpile. Not out of duty, out of stubbornness. When he tried to scold her back inside, she squared up like a starved coyote defending its last scrap. Don't send me away. He wanted to. Every part of him said it'd be easier. Instead, he chopped, and she stacked. They didn't speak again that day, but winter was long, and survival didn't wait for grief to finish grieving. Eventually, he hitched the wagon. The town lay 6 miles south, a blot of humanity he avoided when he could. But supplies ran low, and even a half-dead girl burned through stores faster than he expected. He thought about leaving her behind, then found himself building a crude shelter in the wagon bed instead. She rode silent, eyes wide, devouring every snow, choked tree and fence post like a child witnessing the world for the first time. The town watched them arrive. 6 buildings, a church, a crooked saloon, and the store. Doors cracked open as they passed, curtains twitched. They saw her. He saw them seeing her. At the store, silence thickened. The clerk hesitated. Too long. You got coin? The man asked, voice a little too loud. He dropped silver on the counter. They packed supplies without words. When he turned to leave, he saw them. Townsfolk gathered across the street, muttering. Someone spat. At the ranch, supplies were used sparingly. The girl, he still didn't know her name, watched him repair fences, watched him work until he finally snarled at her to stop staring. I can help. Help what? Die slower? That shut her up. That night, He found a knife driven into his barn door, a message clear as speech. He didn't show her, but he watched her closer after that. The days turned crueler. She stopped asking questions. Once, he caught her in the barn, speaking soft words to the horses, maybe to herself. He stood outside the door and listened longer than he should have. She spoke to her parents, said she was sorry, said she'd be good now. That night, he couldn't sleep. Come morning, she was gone. Panic was something he hadn't felt in years. He told himself it was anger as he scoured the tree line, boots crunching through snowdrifts, heart hammering. When he found her, she wasn't far. She'd dug a shallow grave, two, actually, rocks shaped like crosses above them. She knelt beside them, shoulders shaking. "I thought you'd send me away," she said without turning. He didn't answer. Instead, he helped stack more stones. Spring didn't come in a single day. It crept. The snow rotted, mud swallowed the fields, life fought to rise. So did she. Without asking, she began planting. At first it angered him. Those fields failed every season since his wife passed, but the way she worked, lips pursed, brows furrowed, made shouting feel wrong. She planted, and he ched. One morning, she asked his name. He lied, saying it didn't matter. She asked if he missed someone. He didn't lie. Every damn day. That was the last time they spoke of the dead. By the time the storm circled again, she'd claimed his barn like she belonged there. He let her. Not out of pity, not anymore. Because when he watched her haul broken fence posts, fingers bloodied but refusing surrender, he saw himself. And perhaps that scared him most. When the wolves came, their howls ripped through the night like sorrow itself. She stood beside him, eyes wide, holding the rusted axe he'd given her. Her knuckles were white, but she didn't drop it. He fired once. The howls faded. She asked, "Were they hunting us?" "No." "What then?" "Something weaker." She said nothing after that, but she didn't sleep. Neither did he. In the mornings that followed, she worked harder. He didn't stop her. He worked beside her. One night, she spoke without looking up from the fire. "I can stay, right?" He considered the lie first, then chose silence. In silence, she found her answer. The next morning, he taught her how to hammer nails properly. The week after that, he found her singing softly while she worked. By the time the next blizzard loomed, she no longer flinched when he raised his voice, and when he awoke coughing from fever, it was her small calloused hand pressing a cool rag to his forehead. He didn't tell her thank you. She didn't need him to. When the town's church bell tolled, warning of danger, neither of them looked toward it. Their world had narrowed, and strangely, it felt enough. The snow returned, so did the wind, but for the first time in years, he didn't face them alone, and that was enough to keep him standing. Spring came slow that year. The snow melted not in a rush but in patches, reluctant to leave. Mud swallowed the land. Dead fences leaned into crooked angles. The fields smelled of rot, not life. But every morning, just after the gray light crept over the hills, she was out there. Her small hands dug trenches in the thawed soil with the stubbornness of someone who'd decided she wouldn't be buried yet. He watched from the porch, arms crossed over his chest. She planted in straight lines, not perfect ones, but straight enough. It wasn't that he doubted her work, he doubted the ground itself. Nothing grew here anymore. The land had gone as tired as he had. He almost told her that, but the words died in his throat. Her shoulders, thin and shaking as they were, looked too fragile to bear even one more truth. She worked until her fingers bled. When she saw him watching, she wiped her hands on her dress and kept going. One evening, when the sky burned orange behind the hills, she stood beside him without speaking. He waited. "What do we plant next?" she asked. He looked down at her, then at the stretch of dead earth. "Corn," he said. She nodded like it mattered. Days blurred. He found himself working beside her, showing her how to drive fence posts deeper, how to lift without snapping her spine in two. She listened, not like a child obeying orders, like someone soaking up a language she was meant to speak all along. She smiled once. It startled him. He didn't smile back. But he remembered how. News from the town came not by messenger, but by silence. Roads that once bore riders bringing gossip now carried no one, until the boy came. It was near dusk when the riderless horse appeared first, skittish, lathered in sweat. He found the boy hours later, curled in the ditch, burning with fever, maybe 10 years old, his face too pale, lips cracked. He lifted the boy, ride him to the house, and set him by the fire. She watched silently, her gaze darting between the boy's face and his own. When he poured water, the boy barely swallowed. "He's dying," the girl whispered. He said nothing. She turned to him, voice breaking. "We can't let him." He'd seen that look before, in her, in himself. It wasn't hope, it was refusal. "I need time," she said. "What?" "And yarrow. My mother used them. Please." He should have argued. Instead, he found himself saddling the mare in the dark. He left before dawn. The town hadn't changed. Doors still closed at his approach. Faces peeked from behind curtains, all of them tight with suspicion. When he banged on the storekeeper's door, the man didn't answer. But when he mentioned the herbs, the door creaked open a sliver. A pouch dropped at his feet. No charge, no words. On the ride back, the storm broke. He reached the ranch half frozen, flinging the herbs to the girl as he shook ice from his shoulders. She didn't thank him. She went to work. Hours stretched long. The boy burned hotter than any forge. The girl laid cloths, crushed roots, spoon-fed bitter tea. He sat beside her, silent, helpless. Once he caught her whispering, not to him, not to the boy, to someone else, maybe her parents, maybe herself. By morning, the fever broke. The boy slept. The girl did not. When the boy opened his eyes, she wept for the first time. 2 days later, men came from the town. Not with torches, but with downcast eyes and open hands. His fingers itched toward his rifle, but she stepped between them. The man leading them, Thomas maybe or Henry, spoke first. His voice cracked like a branch under snow. "Is the boy alive?" She nodded. No one spoke after that. They left food behind, and a bucket of nails. Gifts, not peace. That night, he found her sitting in the barn, staring at the locket she always wore. And he approached slow, like she was a wild animal. "They'll hate me less now," she said. "Maybe, maybe not." She shrugged. "It's enough." He thought of correcting her. The storm didn't break gently. It tore across the hills like war, black clouds suffocating the horizon, swallowing the last strips of sunlight until the world turned iron gray. The wind shrieked through the broken fences, rattled the patched windows, and lifted dirt like claws scraping the skin of the earth. Inside the cabin, the girl sat beside the hearth, staring at the door like it might burst inward at any moment. Outside, he moved through the storm as if it didn't matter whether he lived or died. Each shutter had to be secured, each door reinforced. He hammered nails until his fingers split, until blood mixed with the rain. The livestock lowed in the barn, restless, terrified. He calmed them not with words, but with his presence. His silence said more than comfort. It said, "I'm still here." When he returned, soaked to the bone, she met him with dry clothes. He didn't speak. Neither did she. Words felt fragile against the sound of wind clawing at the walls. They knew what was coming wasn't just weather. It was just past midnight when the first shot split the night. It wasn't close. Not yet. He stood, shoulders stiff, and moved to the door. She blocked him. "I'm coming too." He stared at her, long and hard. In her eyes there was no fear now, only choice. Take the axe. Outside, darkness swallowed everything. He moved fast, steps certain even when the mud stole at his heels. She kept pace. Together they reached the barn. The raiders didn't announce themselves. Shadows against shadows, figures flickering between tree trunks, their movements wrong. Fast, hungry, desperate. He saw no campfires. These men didn't come for conversation. They came for whatever they could carry, and whatever they could kill. She held beside him. He wondered in some distant part of his mind when she'd grown taller. The first man rushed him. The shot hit center mass. His rifle cracked, kicked against his shoulder. Felt like shaking hands with death and winning. Another came from the left. A blade glinted. She swung the axe. It hit the raider's leg, a wild, untrained blow, but it slowed him. That was enough. The rancher's boot shattered the man's jaw a second later. "Stay near me," he ordered, but she was already moving. Hours bled together. Gunfire echoed against the hills, muffled by rain and wind. Somewhere, distant howls answered. Wolves, but not close enough yet. Mud turned black with blood, but it was impossible to tell if it was theirs or someone else's. And then, a silence deeper than gunfire settled. In the shadows, something shifted. Movement. Too large. Too quiet. He readied his last shot. Then a scream cut short. From the tree line, a figure moved, not towards them, but between. The warrior. Silent as the grave, painted like ash, the native man tore through the raiders like a spirit summoned by the earth itself. Blade flashed, then vanished. Arrows found throats before screams could. And just as suddenly, he was gone. When the last man fell, the night didn't grow safer, it simply grew empty. The rancher lowered the rifle. She stood beside him, soaked, shivering, but unbroken. "You hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "You? Not bad." He let the rifle drop into the mud. She stepped closer. "You didn't send me away." "Couldn't." She said nothing, but her hand found his. At dawn, they buried the bodies, not out of respect, out of necessity. By midday, townsfolk came, not armed, ashamed. Word had reached them, as it always did, too late. They saw the dead. They saw the girl, face pale, knuckles scraped raw, standing guard beside the old man who'd once ignored them all. A woman stepped forward, the same storekeeper's wife who'd refused to serve them that winter. She carried a key, an old rusted thing, hence, jing from a leather strap. "It's to the cabin North Ridge," she said quietly. "No one's lived there since before." The girl didn't reach for it. The rancher watched, silent. Finally, after a moment that stretched too long, she held out her hand. The key dropped into her palm. The woman nodded once, then turned back to the others. No words of apology were spoken. None were needed. None would have mattered. By sunset, the townsfolk were gone. She sat beside the cornfield, what little had survived the storms. The key rested in her lap. He watched her from the porch, unsure whether to approach. She spoke first, without looking back. "Why'd they give me this?" "Means they expect you to go." "I figured." Silence stretched between them. "I'm not going," she said softly. He moved to her then, sat beside her in the dirt. For a long time, neither spoke. She turned the key in her fingers, let the last of the sunlight catch the rust. "I think I'm tired of running," he nodded. "You sure?" he asked. She finally looked at him. "I'm home, aren't I?" He had no answer. His throat locked, not from grief this time, something else, something harder. Together, they walked back to the house. Days passed. The storms ebbed. The winds lessened. Crops failed, then tried again. Some lived. She planted, but now she didn't do it to survive. She did it because she wanted to see something grow. The warrior came once more, watched from the trees. She saw him. She waved. This time he nodded before vanishing into the hills. The ranch changed, not quickly. Life still fought to exist there, but now she fought with it, not against it. Each morning she woke before the sun, not because she feared starving, because she chose to. At night, when the wind howled, she didn't curl by the fire alone. She sat beside the old man who'd once been waiting to die. They talked sometimes, but often silence was enough. She called him Pa, and he didn't correct her. One morning, when the snow threatened to return, she stood at the edge of the fields and watched. At the horizon, he came up behind her. "What are you looking for?" She smiled. "Nothing." He let that settle. Then she said, "Just checking it's still there." "What?" "The horizon." He chuckled once, low and strange, like it surprised him. They watched the empty hills a little longer, together. Behind them, the door of the house hung open. Not broken, not abandoned. Open.